don't overeat. And if you're like us and are the preparers or the cooks, don't overproduce. It's really easy to want to fix everything, too. And the other thing I'd say is do it now. Get to the store and get some of those things. If you see a turkey or turkey breast now, I would get it. Freeze it. Make sure that you have it when you want it, because it does sound like the availability and the food supply may be down noticeably this year. And you don't want to have another food because you didn't have a choice.
The cost of your Thanksgiving feast is going to be more expensive this year. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, prices will be higher on just about everything because of inflation. The average cost of preparing Thanksgiving dinner last year was about $47. It's expected to be up to 5% more this year. While we can't control prices, we can control what is served and how it's prepared. On today's Sound Living, tips for a healthier Thanksgiving feast. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. A typical Thanksgiving meal, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, sweet potatoes, green beans, and rolls, is relatively healthy. K-State Research and Extension nutrition specialist Sandy Procter says the problem is that we often take healthy foods and prepare them in a not-so-healthy manner. Sandy, when we think about Thanksgiving, we think about, really, as you mentioned to me earlier, a feast. And one of the things that we'd like to focus on is how healthy is that traditional Thanksgiving meal? And for the star of the show, as I like to call it, the turkey, it's really good, but it depends on how we fix the turkey, right?
Isn't that the way it is with most food, that we can figure out a way even to make the most healthful foods decadent if we work at it hard enough? But turkey is a particularly good example of that because it has just a lot of really basically healthy qualities, and a lot of what we do to prepare it can either maintain that healthy name tag that goes on it, or it can change its sort of complexion. So really just some thought around how we prepare turkey, how we use it in our menus, and the side dishes that go along with it.
We do think of turkey as being healthy, though, right?
Yes, and it's become increasingly popular in the United States because of that. In 2019, the records showed that we ate about 16 pounds of turkey per person. That comes out to over 5.3 billion pounds of turkey. So we definitely have embraced the idea of eating turkey, and it's about twice as much as people ate 50 years ago because we've learned a lot about the really good nutrition behind turkey and what positive things it can do for your health. It's a great source of protein. We need protein. We have a focus on that to build and repair bones, muscles, cartilage, skin, blood, tissue. It's also a good source of beneficial vitamins and minerals, and ones that you maybe don't talk about too much unless you're a dietitian, but ones like magnesium and niacin, which is a B vitamin. It's also an excellent source of selenium. Some studies have shown that a diet rich in selenium can prevent certain types of cancer, including bladder and breast and lung cancer. And so, there's some positive things that we just think it tastes good, but it's got a lot going for it too. So it doesn't seem to have the same effect if we take selenium supplements as getting it in food. So having that as an occasional source of nutrients is a really good way to get it. We also know that diabetes can be hard to control around the holidays, and that turkey is particularly good for that, being high in protein and carbohydrate-free. You can work it into your diet in a lot of different ways, use up those leftovers, and help keep blood sugar under control. And this is kind of interesting. Turkey and other kinds of poultry are considered part of the MIND diet. We talked about the Mediterranean and the DASH diets as really being protective of the mind, and that's really where this is focused. But poultry is a big part of that diet to slow mental decline associated with Alzheimer's disease and other causes of dementia. And so they recommend eating poultry products about twice a week as part of this MIND diet, especially older adults. It's not a solution necessarily, but part of the solution that we can address through healthier eating.
Really part of a healthy diet then, isn't it?
It is. I just saw this ad, and you don't see this all the time, that it's rich in many vitamins and minerals and iron and choline, magnesium, niacin, phosphorus, potassium, B12, zinc. So it's really got a lot going for it. It is sort of a healthy food in general. And of course, we didn't mention tryptophan. This one, even my husband talks about tryptophan, and I asked him if he really knew what it was, and he said no, but he knows that it's important and it can make you sleep. It's an amino acid, And it is one of those things that seems to lead to better sleep when we have adequate tryptophan in our diet. But this is an additional science fact. Low tryptophan diet is recommended for people with psoriasis. So again, it's kind of an interesting amino acid, which we know is the building blocks of protein. So it's got a lot going for it and a lot to consider if they were going to make it a main part of our diet.
I'm glad to know that's not a myth, because I was maybe starting to think that was a myth that turkey made you sleepy. So.
Well, I always say, I think it's true. It is. There's tryptophan in turkey, and it has this property that can help you have better sleep. I think probably for most of us, the sheer volume of what we eat around the turkey dinner is also what makes us sleepy. I know personally that it may be the turkey, or it could just be all the rest of the stuff that I eat that makes me sleepy. And the unending football games on television, some of those things just make me sleepy. But I'm not sure that it can all be attributed to the tryptophan in turkey.
When we're looking at the typical Thanksgiving turkey, normally, 12 to 20 pounds or whatever we decide to do, we're going to throw that in a roaster. Most people, I'm assuming if we just put the bird in there by itself, we're maintaining the health of the bird?
Well, yeah, the healthfulness properties.
Yeah, the bird is not going to be...
He's dead. The bird is dead. The health is no longer a thing. But no, when we put it in the roaster, chances are that's going to be about the most healthful way of preparing it that we can. But we have to remember, too, that the fat under most poultry is right under the skin, and so cooking that with the skin on and cooking that fat usually is what we need to make it be moist and edible, but that does add a little bit of fat, and the white meat is lower fat if that's a concern than the dark meat. And some of those things really, I don't think, are going to make a lot of difference if, this is that one-time meal. But I do think it is important to remember that even turkeys that we buy in the store probably have been processed with a solution or some sort of a brine, perhaps, that may add a considerable amount of sodium to them. But again, we kind of balance that with what alternatives might be and the sheer availability maybe of a fresh, unprocessed turkey is probably not something that most of us can take part in.
When we look at the entire meal from a health standpoint, we've got some options there that really are oven by themselves. Fairly healthy. Some people do mashed potatoes, some people do stuffing, cranberry sauce, green beans, rolls, maybe a pumpkin pie. We mentioned pecan pie earlier because it's one of those things I like, but it is not necessarily something I should probably have a huge slice of. But a lot of this stuff in moderation, if we treat it right, is not going to be super unhealthy anyway.
Well, when you think about it, it is really one of the big dinners that we do where we might be able to have a real focus on some really healthy vegetables. You mentioned green beans, and green bean casserole. It seems like it's a classic, but I've kind of opted out for sort of a new classic, and that's roasted Brussels sprouts. And that's a really delicious side dish. I've even converted some of my non-cabbage loving family to sort of embrace the idea of roasted Brussels sprouts. And when you think about the nutritional quality as well as just the seasonality, the availability, and I know I'm not the only one because those are oftentimes hard to find as well. So I think that's kind of a trending vegetable that is got a lot of health to it. And usually we think about some of the salads. Cranberries are very healthy. Typically, because of their sort of bitter natural flavor, they have a lot of sugar added to them. But there's different ways you can prepare them. One of the favorites in our family is to add a fresh apple and a fresh orange, peel on and everything, in a food processor with the fresh cranberries, and then it's all chopped up really finely, and some sugar is added, but it makes this real wonderful sort of side dish that's got quite a little kick to it. Not real sweet, like maybe a cranberry gel would be, and just something that the entire family looks forward to. So, there's recipes out there that use traditional foods in a pretty healthy way.
It always comes down to choices, and really when you're looking at rolls, that can be another choice. If you go with whole wheat rolls, that's probably going to be better than some other types.
Yeah, I always try to look at ways I can fit whole grains into the meal. And my rolls, that's usually one place that I do it, and that one's a little bit more overt. You can tell there's whole wheat flour in it. I oftentimes, if I can find it, will use whole wheat bread stuffing cubes too. So just trying to pick up that fiber a little bit and some of the benefits of, sneaking it in when people wouldn't really notice, but it's something that I like to do, again, to just sort of increase the plus side of the positives for the meal.
Pumpkin pie, the pumpkin itself is normally healthy, right?
Yeah, pumpkin is great. And same way with squash and some of the other things that you'll see. My husband's grandmother used to always make squash pie. And it was, I think, a variety of squash, what she had, a winter squash that she grew in her garden. And yes, there was sugar added to it. But, with the eggs and then the vegetable, it's really one of your healthier pies. Where we find the issues with pumpkin pie, we can really make it a much lighter, lower calorie version if we just simply do it without the crust. Make it just in a baking dish or a ramekin individual serving with the filling and bake it, but without the crust. And maybe even just sprinkle a little bit of crumb topping or something on it to sort of give you that pie crust flavor, but without the added fat and salt that comes in regular pie crust.
I mentioned the pecan pie, and you mentioned that there is some hope for me because there is a way to do that to where it's a little bit healthier.
Well, one thing that I've really enjoyed doing, and it's just an optics trick, really, but instead of having that whole pie and then you have to, decide right at that point where it's just calling your name how big of a piece you're going to cut, I have made just little mini muffin tins with little bites of pecan pies. There's recipes where you see that actually almost about a thumbprint size of pecan pie bites. And they'll have that same filling, but instead of that whole big piece of pie, you maybe have one or two of those little bites and you get the same flavor, you get that same feeling of having that special food that the meal wouldn't be the same without, but you don't maybe go all in on the sheer portion. And I don't know about you, but usually by that time in the meal, there isn't a whole lot of room in me for a lot of desserts. So sometimes it's just that little taste is all I really need.
This is maybe one of those times when we want to look things over and decide what we really, really want to have so that we maybe don't overeat.
Yeah, don't overeat. And if you're like us and are the preparers or the cooks, don't overproduce. It's really easy to want to fix everything too. And the other thing I'd say is do it now. Get to the store and get some of those things. If you see a turkey or turkey breast now, I would get it. Freeze it. Make sure that you have it when you want it, because it does sound like the availability and the food supply may be down noticeably this year. And you don't want to have another food because you didn't have a choice. If that's your choice, that's certainly fine. But if you're looking for something particular and you see it, now might be a good time to scoop it up.
Always nice to have a menu. Also always nice to know what others plan to bring. I know everybody kind of has their specialty dish, but you want to make sure, actually check with them to make sure they're going to do it this year.
Yeah, and it might be a time to have that conversation, and maybe they want to, sort of change it up. That's the point we're at in our family right now, is having those conversations about, well, you could, bring this, or it would be great if you want to consider this. And I did see something in a popular magazine just a week or so ago that said maybe you can sort of guide that discussion by saying, I'd really like you to bring a cold side dish. So, whether that's a dessert or a salad or something. And then somebody else, I could really use a hot vegetable dish, sort of giving them some free rein, but at least knowing that you're not going to end up with 3 cranberry salads. Kind of giving it some guided direction as you're having that discussion about what to bring to dinner.
I've also found out that if you sit together and you're doing a lot more talking, you do a lot less eating when you do a lot more talking, it seems like.
And that's really one of the beauties, I think, of being a super organized hostess, is getting to be at the table, enjoying that discussion. And I can always tell when I needed to do something a little different, when it's like, I sort of missed that. I was in the kitchen. So it is really nice when you have some of those things planned ahead or simplified in ways that maybe you can figure out how to do it so that you have time to really enjoy. And especially after all of the lack of getting together that we've been unable to do over the past year and a half to 2 years, maybe this year we focus even more on the fellowship than the food.
That's K-State Research and Extension Nutrition Specialist Sandy Procter. To learn more about nutrition programs offered by Extension, contact your local Extension office or visit ksre.ksu.edu. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.